It is 8 a.m. Welcome to TDX 2026. This is the first session. You have arrived early, and I very much appreciate your time. As I mentioned to a few of you, time is our most precious resource, so thank you for giving me your next few minutes. I hope to give you back something in return based on what I have learned as a practitioner in this domain. Same PSA, this session is not about how to build agents or what Agentforce is. This session is specifically on the type of data challenges that can get in the way of human decision-making as well as agentic decision-making. The session is sponsored by the admin track, so we are going to talk about some of the things you would need to worry about if you're a Salesforce administrator / part-time analyst / part-time developer / part-time architect. But we are going to go through real exercises that actually get in the way. All data has been scrubbed for sensitivity. My name is Mehmet Orun, and my day job these days, which still feels funny to say it, is the Chief Strategy Officer for a software company. But I am a certified data architect, data management practitioner by background. This is what a lot of these are based on. I am also one of the global community leaders for the Data Blazor community, which is a cross-role, cross-product group that deals with all things data, whether it is duplicate management in your CRM, how to provide the contextual intelligence in Data 360, or know the difference between a MuleSoft Informatica or Data 360 connector. If you're not a member, please join. I also want to acknowledge contributions of many of my colleagues in this space where when a new feature is released, there may be feature documentation, but there is not do's and don'ts best practices often. These are some of the people I spent much of my personal time last year as we compared notes, even when people may compete with each other in their day jobs, so we can bring to you some of these practices. So with that, let's briefly touch upon the evolving role of the Salesforce admin. How many of you are admins in the room as your primary or secondary association? So we've had in the admin skill set the role of data management for a very long time. What is changing, in my opinion, is while historically admins were asked to keep clean data in their orgs, when we are talking about exposing this data from your CRM org, of course, as well as other sources, the focus is shifting to have trusted data. And they are not exactly the same. We're going to talk about some examples. Because your counter can look clean, but it may still not give you what you need when you need it. So we are going to do this across 3 chapters. We are going to spend about 20 minutes, 20 to 25 minutes, in an interactive session going through different scenarios. These are generic scenarios, and then I'm going to roll into what we have done as a customer. We have had Agentforce on Data 360 unified profiles in production since May of last year. So I'm going to show you how we applied some of the principles with real production screenshots. Then we are going to have the last 5 to 8 minutes, depending on time, for questions, as well as resources that can help you with your journey. The Data Blazor community and Salesforce released a bunch of new resources this week, and I want you to know about them because I think it may be useful. With that, let's go into why an answer can give you a great answer and it is confidently wrong. Thank you for the smiles because I experienced this a lot. So one of the interesting aspects is if you're a technologist, how many of you are technologists one way or another? Because TDX, this is our hand-raising exercise of the morning. We may differentiate, is this a hallucination? Is this an incorrect response? Did we just not put the guardrails? Or we may question if the user just did not know how to ask the question the correct way. If you're the end user, if you're the end consumer, what you know is you get an answer, you don't believe the answer, the agent doesn't work, you're not going to adapt it. So while there are distinct technical factors that goes into this, we are going to zoom out and look at this from an end user's point of view and make sure that we still put the right technical capabilities in place to make sure we can mitigate this as much as we can. So we are going to do a number of exercises, and some of it is going to be raised hands. We also have a mic if anyone wants to speak up. I will make sure that we cover all the topic though, so if I cut you off, it's so we can fit the content. We are planning on implementing a service agent. How many of you are dealing with service agents or Service Cloud today? Okay. So there's a requirement that at the end of the service agent interaction, we want to check if the customer wants to receive marketing messages. Fairly common requirement, right? There has been a standard field for email opt-out on the contact object for at least a decade. The agent is having the interaction. You are now in the middle of testing. The email opt-out field is empty, so it is set to false. What would or should the agent do in this situation? Should it assume the person have opted into marketing messages and not ask? Throw out some answers. Like real life, this is incomplete information. So the agent looks up the record, and it sees that email opt-out field is blank, thus it is set to false, because it's a binary field, it's a checkbox. Right? It's a standard field that has existed. If this is what the agent is looking at, will it ask the consumer if they want to sign up for marketing messages? Okay. So if the email opt-out is false, then they probably wouldn't because they didn't opt in. So it will actually skip the process. There are fields that says, do you email opt-in? If you say yes, you can get marketing messages. If email opt-out is equal to false, you may not. So we already want to make sure the rule is interpreted correctly. Thank you for participating. I know it's early. Here is the interesting thing. Let's imagine we wrote the instructions. So email opt-out equals false and email opt-in equals true are understood consistently. What if that field is completely empty in your entire object? What if you've never actually used this field, even though it's a standard field, because you use Marketing Cloud and you're tracking this in Marketing Cloud? How many of you are admins again? One more time. So if you do not understand fields that are never used or they are no longer used for your business context, for your end user's context, and you expose those fields to the agent, when an agent is interacting at the record level, it's not going to know the difference between there is no value in this field or I should go elsewhere to look up the data. So I'm starting with a very specific example. We are going to talk about how to use Flow and Data 360 and other things to get to this. But as a foundational piece, because most Agentforce proof of concept projects are starting in CRM only today. If you don't understand how your object fields are used, this is a case of agent hallucinating because it thought the person had opted in based on a field you had never used. Is this example clear? Do you have any questions? Okay. So the way that you would approach it is, well, you know that this field doesn't exist against the requirements. You know you need to find the information. So you will build your overall architecture to make sure you get the data from where that data is captured. So as Salesforce admins, we want to know which fields are used, unused, or reliable at scale. We want to know where there are multiple sources. How do we bring it together? Salesforce has been talking about a data quality management framework for multiple years. Spoiler alert, this is now a new trail that launched on Tuesday. And a lot of the concepts I'm going to talk about today, you should go and take the badges after this week so you have a fresher perspective on some of these ideas. And if you see Angelica at the conference, she's great. She's about to become an MVP Hall of Famer. If you have any architectural questions, she's one of my go-to people. So data profiling is a concept that gives you insights about your field fill rates, distinct value counts, how unique are the values, top and bottom value frequencies. And if you use it correctly in your environment, you should look at this given a persona permission, and you should focus on recent usage. The reason I say this is, if I'm an admin of an org, and I can see every record in my object, The way I'm going to do an agentic data access assessment is not going to be the same as if I do this assessment under a customer service rep's permission, because an agent will have either the same or a subset of the fields and records a customer service rep should have access to, because an agent is taking partial action. So use these tools, apply these processes, and always do your analysis in your user context that you're going to augment with the power of agents. So now let's shift to another step. Let's talk about a different use case. Now it is a Sales Cloud extension. We want to implement a BDR agent who's going to automatically reach out to leads, which may be net new prospects or existing customers. And we want to send them personalized messages. You might have seen one of these demos from Salesforce. If you don't work with Sales Cloud, the account object has a standard field industry. The industry field usually ships with a default list of about 30 values. And we want to send personalized messages to the person at this company. How would you differentiate between a 5-person startup and an 80,000+ $46 billion revenue company Salesforce for that personalized message? First, you need to check if you have the data available in your system. How many of your end users love entering data rather than doing the job that gets them paid? Look, this is a 25-year-old problem in the Salesforce ecosystem. It is a 30-plus-year problem in the CRM system. When your agents need data and your users either don't know or they are not incentivized to enter what your agent needs, we need to think about the problem differently. So the solution, I'm going to come back to this AppExchange provider again also, is the concept of data enrichment. Looking at the data you have in your application and either using other first-party sources, other systems you may have internally, or third-party enrichment providers, it will give you more data. So there are so many data points here. The font is intentionally small. If instead of 30 different industry pick list values that people don't fill that often anyway, I want to get a list of 1,100 values based on the next industry classification and know the credit risk rating, company size, revenue, are they growing or not, I'm going to choose something like Moody's Orbis. Because it's going to look at what I have in my account. It's going to give me the information in my org so my agents can take advantage of it. Otherwise, your prompts strive to reference fields that may be populated but may not be detailed enough to meet your business needs. Questions?
So if you go with a data provider that can provide, like you said, like 1,000 different industry options, how do you do reporting on that then? Because usually you'll want to report and segment by industry. So how would you do it with 1,000?
Okay, so the question is, okay, that's great, now we have more detailed data, but how do we have coarser grain data? How do we know this is telecommunications or healthcare? The beauty of these codes is they're actually in a taxonomy. They are not in a flat list. So you can say, here is a list of healthcare providers and go all the way down to dental, orthodontry, like pick your granular piece, because they get classified for what they do. And industry classification is different than company size, company location. There are different ways we can look at this. Happy to chat about details if you're interested. So let's talk about a different challenge. It's still the BDR agent, but before we automatically reach out to someone that's interested, we want to know if they are an existing customer that just wants another product or a net new customer. Here are 2 real addresses. There are 2 real accounts. Salesforce at 415 Mission and Slack at 500 Howard. How would you know the lead that came in from Slack is actually an existing customer because Salesforce is your customer? If you people deal with duplicate management based on my morning conversation, could you match these? And no. If you do not architect this properly, if you are hoping the agent is going to compare Salesforce to Slack, Howard Street to Mission Street, you are not going to be able to. This is not a string matching problem. This is a reference data problem where you want to understand different entities are related to each other. The good news is data enrichment helps with this challenge also, because when you use an enrichment source, you can get the corporate hierarchy. You can know that Tableau and Informatica and Slack and MuleSoft are all subsidiaries of Salesforce, and Salesforce London is a location of Salesforce, which is headquartered in San Francisco. I shared these because if you're an admin or an architect, these have been part of the ecosystem for a long time. We just don't talk about them as often. So when you understand the problem you're trying to solve, there is usually a solution in the ecosystem. Incidentally, this is a solution we use as a customer for the reasons I shared. So let's come back to the service agent. We are going to dive deeper into the problem space. My service agent needs to know my order history and my case history in order to effectively respond to the customer. Let's say that I have 2 records in my contact object, John Smith and John Smith, with these phone numbers. And 2 of the orders, let's assume I'm using B2C order management, are related to the first record, and 1 order is related to the second record. Raise your hand if you think John's total lifetime value is $100. Okay, the test passed. Raise your hand if John's total lifetime value is 300. 700? 1,000? Raise your hand if you're not sure. Look. LLMs are not good at confident matching, where it's going to guarantee you are not going to mix incorrect customers to each other. Are there any Salesforce employees in the room? Okay, if so, this next question is easier. Do you recognize the phone number? That's this phone number for Salesforce Corporate. Salesforce does have multiple employees named John Smith, like for reals, spelled differently. And there is a reason you would not want to just throw things into an LLM. It is not going to know. What Agentforce will ask is, I found 2 different records, which one you're interested in? Test this out. Or I think I have a demo video of this scenario somewhere. And if I'm looking at contact ID 1, the total value is 300. If I'm looking at contact ID 5, number is 700. This is why you would have Data 360 as part of your solution architecture. So you identify when records should and should not match. And this is why we refer to it as a system of context or a system of reference. A lot more details we could cover in more time on who's allowed to see what record, but know that an agent is not automatically going to resolve your duplicates on its own. You want to have the right architectural components and guardrails, so you match them when you're supposed to and you don't when you shouldn't. Speaking of, a more detailed exercise for you. We are now going to zoom out and we're going to look at 6 different records. We have John Smith, and John Smith. We are going to implement a match rule that says fuzzy first name and exact last name and either email or phone number. How many of you have set up match rules in the system? A few. So will contact ID 1 and 2 match based on the match rule? Raise your hand if you think so. Will contact ID 3 and 4 match according to this match rule? When you look through contacts 1 through 4, does anything make you feel slightly uncomfortable? It's not obvious in what you see, but we will get into that. What about will contacts 5 and 6 match to each other? I see people shaking their heads no, because we have John Smith, jsmith@nto.com versus John Smith, which is j.smith@nto.com. They are not the same emails, right? However, does contact ID 6 match to contact ID 1? Because same phone number. Does contact ID 1 have the same email as contact ID 5? Same email, sorry. If we are not paying attention to certain details around our data quality, records 1, 2, 5, and 6 would match each other. Now, here's the kicker about this example. This is a simulation of a real problem. I have seen post-system go live tens of times in my career, hence the exercise. na@na.com is the most frequently entered fake email address by business users because developers enter test@test.com. Business users prefer shorter strings. If the only contact point you have in your system is na@na.com, not only you're going to incorrectly match someone in US to someone in France, that actually is not a reachable contact point, so you're going to waste money and potentially go on the spam house hot seat. And you may get penalized for sending digital marketing messages. The way you would approach this is by identifying what records are not actionable and hiding them from agentic and possibly end-user access. This is the second time I talked about hiding, you might have noticed. If you're an admin, controls is going to increase the likelihood agents are going to act on confident information. So when data is questionable, you can defer how you're going to handle this. This is one of the key tools in your tool chest. And when you know something is a valid contact point that you cannot delete, by the way, in your system, because I can pick up the phone and reach John or John, as opposed to na@na.com. I could use cleanup tools and say, I want to get rid of them in my system of record. You should not match on them, but you need to keep them. Another reason why you should think about using Data 360's identity resolution, and please do not do match merges in your CRM if you do not understand your record, because unmerges are incredibly painful, they are expensive, and your goal is to actually have a consistent, unified understanding of your customers, not to have fewer records when the cost of a mistake is higher than the value. This is, by the way, what I mean by trusted versus clean data, because if I ended up with 2 records that may seem cleaner, it will just be wrong. And this is one of the key takeaways I hope you will take from this week. So we're going to continue. This actually kind of happened for real. The name was different at a World Tour a few weeks ago. We are having a call center agent. It is Agentforce voice. You call in. Any one of you, you made a phone call from this phone number and says, hello, Parker, how can I help you today? You know why that happens? Because you did not exclude commonly occurring phone numbers or emails from your personalization algorithm. If I make a phone call and the first thing I experience from a company's agent is they don't even know my name, I'm going to hit 000, agent, agent, agent. It's going to defeat the purpose. So be mindful, understand your data to get around these challenges. Salesforce has many products across their portfolio. There are 6,000 apps on AppExchange that can extend the capabilities of the portfolio. So if these stories are resonating, you can actually use a product that will tell you what is your field usage in a contextual way, what is your data fragmentation risk. You can use the insights to identify what are the fields you probably should and you probably should not use in order to effectively understand your matching, and then dive deeper into, are there outlier values that while they are the right fields to use, you need to know these values to exclude them. When you detect these in your org, and native tools have the advantage of both running within your security rules in your UI, and the results are kept in your org, you can feed them into Data 360. This is a data transform screenshot where you would normalize the fields that are relevant. You would exclude the values that should not be part of matching, either because they were bad values or they should not be used in matching, even though you're going to keep it in the source. So you would keep the Salesforce corporate number in your object, but you would filter it out here in order to get to the correct matching results. Because if you don't do this, your agent is going to look up the data, it's going to interpret it, and it may miss details, it may mix in too many details, and it's either going to be users losing trust in the system, or it's going to be a compliance risk, or both. Questions? I see a lot of nodding, so hopefully this is resonating. And know that whether you're an admin, architect, or developer, these feature and capabilities as a pattern is your friend. Use security controls and only expose to the agents data it can trust, whether it is fields or records, or data should not come from a CRM object, but should come from Data 360. The way you control it is you can use flow to say, when you get this question, retrieve the data explicitly from the source. So while having good data dictionaries is very useful to have the context of what object, what field to use, you can be more fine-grained in your controls, in your retrieval logic. I'm going to show you some real examples of our own implementations shortly, so we go from theory to practice. LLMs are also still not great at math, so if you need consistent answers and your data is buried in unstructured data sources, consider extracting the most important details, such as an invoice number, invoice date, invoice amount, and then put a calculated insight on top of it, so you always retrieve the same number if and when it matters. Because there are conditions you're going to want to do this, both for data reliability as well as for cost optimization. So that was a bit of theory with interactivity. I hope that was good. Let me pivot to how we actually apply these as a company. So I work for a software company. I'm passionate about data. Hopefully that's clear by now. And as a company, we also focus on data quality solutions. We simplified our architecture as much as we could. We moved everything to the Salesforce stack. We still have Snowflake. And like every customer, every organization out there, we want our employees to be efficient and effective, and employees want to do what they have to do to get results done. We actually have our own framework called KYCD as we look at what do we know about the situation, what do we need to understand, is this a priority, how do we solve it? It guides our investment decisions, it guides our architecture decisions. Our CFO will ask me, how do you know whether we should do this or not? It sounds good, but what's your evidence? So the way we approach this is everything started with a simple problem that a salesperson saying, yes, but it takes me too long to prepare. This is March last year, March 2025. And because we sell software to Salesforce customers and consultants, and we use a distribution software that we get a lead record every time someone would install our product or try our product in an environment, we have a lot of lead records for the same person at the same company. These are not unintentional duplicates to merge. These are individual engagement records where we want to maintain the context. So we needed to find a better way to understand engagements across leads, across Slack messages, across chatter summaries, various activities, in order to be able to go faster. So our CFO said, okay, so I hear it, but is this a big enough problem? Or is this one deal that is delayed? A couple of examples, how do we know? So we assessed our data, and the good news was when we look at the contact data, things looked clean. We have less than 3% duplication rate. That means we're managing our data. When we assessed our lead data, the fragmentation rate was around 50%. Now this is fragmentation because we have multiple records as we should. So we were able to say, look, 1 out of 2 times, we are not going to have complete information. And the people we had the highest risk are our best customers, our biggest prospects, because they interact with us the most. So I was able to go with numerical evidence, which CFOs like and often don't get, with, yes, it is a big enough problem that we want to act upon. We then looked at what else we do and we do not have. And since you do not have to know the industry, company size, company revenue to make a sale, this information would not be included in the account record. And we wanted to get more data. Diving details, you also don't need to know the industry of the customer as long as they are buying. That's the sales rep perspective, right? And it's legit. We want them to sell, so it pays our bills. And the level of detail we had was insufficient. So we decided to not only unify our records, but enrich our records. So we had the right information with the least amount of effort. We got an unexpected bonus from analyzing our data. We discovered at the time 35% of our evaluators were named user, popular name. Marketing Cloud charges us by the record. This meant we were paying for 35% of records that were not going to be actionable. So assessing our data actually got us to change our business processes, so it was no longer just a Data 360 or agent implementation. We decided to clean our data, reduce our spend in terms of overall architecture investments, and we ultimately unified the data with Data 360. The problem statement that we set forth is, how do we understand our interactions with a customer so if there's an outstanding item on our part, it doesn't get in the way of closing a sale? Because these nuggets were buried in emails, transcripts, Slack messages, notes, chatter, next step field, etc. And I'm guessing you have the equivalent of this. In Agentforce, we give explicit instructions that says, whenever you're looking at a record, see if there are other records about this customer, about this contact, about this account that Data 360 knows about. And we implemented Flow. Again, you'll have these in the PDF to retrieve all of the pieces, and this became our balanced speed and cost factor. Because it doesn't matter which of the now 24 records for SAM we have in our system. Every single record, if you're authorized to see the information, will show you the exact same insights. It will retrieve the local activities that we capture with Einstein Activity Capture. It will go out and retrieve additional recent transcripts. And this is how we have the right data that we know we can trust because we put the deterministic guardrails around it, where we have a unified understanding of our customer, where we retrieve data when it is needed just in time. And this is why it now takes roughly 2 minutes to do research rather than 15 to 30 minutes per sales engagement. And much of the 2 minutes is reading the output as opposed to looking for information. So real results, real screenshot, albeit a bit old. So when I ask, hey, what are the outstanding items? It retrieved data from opportunities, transcripts, like engagements. This is one of the things I do in my day job every Friday to make sure that we are going to start our Monday mornings properly. And this started as an employee agent, and we want to know that these insights are legit and working so we can further extend it and also have customer agents. We want to accelerate and streamline our engagement cycle. We had the same challenges as we talk about. The difference between keeping on having those challenges and acting or having better results is action. So I hope I was able to share with you some good examples today. I'm going to highlight a few specific resources that are now available as brand new. Then we're going to have 5 minutes for open Q&A. The Data 360 team launched a playbook with a series of questionnaires how to overcome pieces. You can scan to download. We are posting about this on LinkedIn also. We essentially brought in the conversations we are having, and they've become templatized, so you can use them in your own org. If you're not a member of the Data Blazor community, because none of us have all the answers, please join, because we are constantly learning from each other. We do workshops. The next workshop is going to be as part of the Dreaming in Data Community Conference in Chicago, May 19th through 21st. If you want a sticker about the conference, I have a few in my pocket. One of the hardest things I've done professionally was distill a lot of what we are talking about into badges, working with the Trailhead team. So we now have the Explore Data Quality Fundamental Trail live. It is the first community-authored trail on Trailhead. And data profiling and cleanup fundamentals went live yesterday. Enrichment, profile unification, and monitoring is getting published by middle of June is the last date I heard. Follow these trails to keep learning because the content is coming from active practitioners. And then the details on what can cause AI to be wrong and how do you assess your readiness are also 2 badges that went live yesterday. I hope you will take them. I hope they will be helpful in your journey.